Good morning and welcome to this week's edition of Groundwork Ohio's morning meeting. We're super happy to have you here. Really excited about today's guest. I'm going to go ahead and let the meeting room continue to load a little bit. But before we kick off, obviously, really big news last night from the federal government around the shutdown. Finally seeing some motion there in the shutdown. And we're still processing what this means for Timeline in Ohio programming. I'm not sure. I don't quite, I don't know if I see friends from Head Start on here yet, but if they hop on, definitely welcome an update from them since I know some of those grant contracts are timing out such that folks might be impacted. And we've seen some media stories of programmings needing to go on pause for the rest of this month. So we will continue to monitor that and put out calls for action as is helpful for our folks in the field. So we might have a little bit of time at the end here, depending on who hops on for some updates along those lines. But in the meantime, I want to welcome our wonderful guest, Jo Simonsen. Jo is here from Kinnect, and she's going to talk about her work designing innovative and equitable solutions to systemic problems facing kinship and adoptive families specifically. So we're really thrilled to have her. I'll just share a little bit more about her background and then pass it over. Jo is the Kin First manager, and she joined Kinnect as a regional director in 2021. She brings over 3 decades of experience in this space, working through some of the toughest issues Ohio families are facing, including safety from domestic violence, access to behavioral health, and improving child well-being. She recently managed the design, installation, and implementation of a collaborative project with the Legal Aid Society of Greater Cincinnati, testing and evaluating a more robust referral model that resulted in an 1,800% increase in caregiver referrals being received by the legal aid kinship care team, which is incredible. Before this work, Jo served as the Family Systems Advocacy Director for the Ohio Domestic Violence Network, where she led cross-system collaborations and training initiatives to address children exposed to domestic violence. And she privately consulted as an expert witness in civil and criminal cases of domestic violence. Jo, we're so thrilled to have you this morning. So grateful for you sharing your time with us, and I'll pass it over to you.
Well, thank you so much. I'm so happy to be invited to this meeting, and I look forward to attending it more often. I recently went to Groundwork's Momentum Institute and was impressed. And I do serve on the Safe Babies Advisory board as well, and so really getting to know the organization and their good and important work, and what it definitely is of interest to our organization because it matters for the families that we serve so much. I know that there's some important news around Head Start today. So if need be, I can cut it short, just kind of interrupt me and say, hey, we kind of need to close to address some of that. But I'll go ahead and share my screen right now. I practiced. We'll see how this goes. There we go. Share. I'm going to put it in presentation mode. And I think we'll be good. Success, I think, right?
Looks great.
Okay, wonderful. So I'm from Kinnect. We are a statewide program, but we actually work across the country with our colleagues and do trainings in North Carolina, California. We travel quite a bit around Tennessee. Our work is really all connected to trying to. We used to be called the Waiting Child Fund. It was for children waiting to get homes, and ideally homes back with people that knew and loved them. So kinship families. I kind of think of our work as kin first and kin forward. So kin first is all the programming that we do to help identify and do family search and engagement or family finding for children that are in foster care. So that's our Connect to Family program. But then on the other side of our work, it's kind of not just kin first, but it's also kin forward. Once children are living with their kinship caregivers, which are often relatives, grandparents, aunts, uncles, siblings, but sometimes it can be coaches or teachers or somebody that's sort of known to the child and the family. Then how are we setting them up to be successful in that arrangement and perhaps find that relational and legal permanency? So that work is really done through the Ohio Kinship and Adoption Navigator program that is a state program. and provides information, referral, resources, flex funds, benefits coordination, all kinds of things once the child is in the home to help that arrangement be successful. And then we also have a youth navigator network program that does sort of the same for transition aged youth. We do some youth-centered permanency roundtable work and congregate care reduction as well. So lots of things to try to get kids into really great situations with people that know and love them. Being Adoption Awareness Month this month, it was really great timing to be invited here because we've been really kind of noodling on adoption a lot this year. Just different things have been really surfacing that have caught our attention. So I'm going to share a little bit of that with you today. So we were working on that legal pilot that was mentioned, and we thought we needed to really understand what was going on. At the same time, we were doing a legal landscape assessment in Ohio, both ourselves and with a partnership with the American Bar Association. So one of our first steps was to take a look at some of the Ohio CAN statistics. So these are callers that are kinship or adoptive parents. They're calling for support from our navigators. And we do an assessment, and generally it's usually in the top three of needs is their legal needs. And we look at generally about 40% of the callers say that they have either somewhat challenging or very challenging legal needs. So that's one of the main services that we're trying to connect them with. We're noticing that there's more interest in adoption than we expected. So we look at about 6 months of caller data from Ohio CAN to see exactly what those legal needs that families were talking to us about. And when we looked at 383 service episodes and coded and categorized and analyzed them, we learned that about nearly a quarter of those families were really interested in changing their current legal relationship or relationship status to the child to adoption. And a lot of times this means that they're kind of curious about it, they're interested, they don't know if it might be right for them. And in many cases, it really isn't always the best solution. But definitely they need some legal support to figure that out, which makes the most sense for their situation. When we looked at that data, 39% of the respondents left sort of like, what is the change I want blank? But after that, their adoption was the next leading interest. So this chart, I'm sorry, it's not great for visual appeal here, but the blank, the tall yellow bar on the right is those who said, I'm not sure what I need. And then there are other things like adoption, caregiver affidavits, becoming foster or foster to adopt parent, guardianship. Guardianship/custody is another sort of term of art, legal custody, power of attorney, temporary custody, and some are unsure. But it was surprising to us that this adoption was so high. So it was really after blank, it was the next highest. So then we took a look at a report that we received from our legal landscape assessment from the American Bar Association. They partnered with us and they surveyed attorneys, judges, magistrates, GALs, and looked at sort of what some of the needs, the legal landscape was here in Ohio. They also did looked at some of our statutes, and then they did some case law research as well. And they had about 10 findings. And one of those was that while adoption support does exist in Ohio, that there's room for much improvement, and that we're pretty clear on ourselves. The interesting news is when we looked at it, though, what the legal professionals were saying, it's not really ranked all that high. But we have some interesting other opinions from or learnings from our legal landscape work, or excuse me, our legal pilot work. So here, the people that were surveyed said, yeah, it's a thing, but it's not nearly as high as the financial supports and benefits, which is very true in our experience to child care benefits. So when Ohio CAN callers call us, that's usually the number one reason, is just those basic daily living needs. But you can see some of the other things that ranked here. So we also did our legal pilot, and that was a partnership with Cincinnati. And since we started that in September 2024, we have referred and had 100 cases go through the intake process from Ohio Can Callers to the Legal Aid Society of Greater Cincinnati. Oh, and I should correct this. In my bio, it said 1,800%. That was my typo. It's actually 1,600% increase, but still a win. Yay. So we kept referring and referring to Legal Aid of Cincinnati, and they're kind of like, oh, I don't know if we're getting these. We're like, well, that's what our callers are saying too. So we implemented a new referral model, and actually it worked to great success. And so 16 times the number is what we're experiencing now of families coming from Ohio Can and getting into legal aid and going through the intake process. So that was a win in itself. But the other thing that we were noticing in that was that adoption kept ranking really high. And that's a little bit of a pickle because legal aids typically can't do adoption. They are nearly all partnered with some sort of pro bono or volunteer lawyer project. And so those families will often that are very interested in adoption and will often be referred there. But that supply of volunteer and pro bono attorneys is very limited. So the other thing that is happening as a result of this is we're noting that there's really not the kind of kinship specific adoption resources that we need in Ohio. There's a lot of adoption, like information I'm talking about, but it's not really the right kind of information that our families are looking for. So that suggested an opportunity as well for us to develop this kinship specific adoption resource. So we're pursuing that. We're looking for, we're submitting proposals, looking for funding. We're partnering with the Legal Aid Society of Greater Cincinnati on that. That's a piece that we really want to develop. We've also developed with them a legal relationships in kinship care video presented by their attorney, John Altman. And then we've also turned that into sort of an e-learning module too. So families could use that either way. Those are pending approval at DCY, but we can't wait to release those. Those would be good resources for any kinship family, just kind of confused by all of the different types of legal relationships that are available to them. I'm going to show you this real quick here. This was just the other in the pilot. So you can see custody ranks very high. JFS benefits also high. And then there it is again, adoption is up there. So a lot of times those attorneys would at least hear the family out and say, it sounds like what you're really trying to achieve is this, and maybe there's a less costly, but still sort of permanent way we can achieve that through some things that legal aid can help you with. But otherwise, they'll get referred to a pro bono or volunteer lawyer program or some other adoption attorney. The other thing that's worth noting is that I think it was 2023, the General Assembly passed a law that changed adoption for kinship caregivers. Well, for all of Ohio, but it helped allow those the tolling of the time that the child needs to be with the family. Now they can use time that they were already placed with the kinship family. So the clock can start earlier in effect. I can try to explain that better if you need more information on that. Let me see there. I think there was one other thing I wanted to say there. Let me check my notes here. Oh, so all of this between what we're hearing from the ABA, what we're learning from the early learnings of our pilots, and what we're learning from our statistics of Ohio Can Callers is that we need to think about when is the right time to have these adoption conversations. In family finding and engagement, sometimes when you're just trying to find a family member that's suitable to bring the child into the home, I think people might be a little scared to say, and by the way, do you want to adopt? That feels really permanent when somebody's going, I don't even know if I want to do this yet. So we hold off sometimes with that information. But now, because of this, what we're seeing in that there really is an interest from kinship caregivers and understanding that more, we're trying to figure out when is the right time to have those conversations with families about what services are out there or what resources. And then one other thing I wanted to say, in addition to that resource that we're hoping to develop, we are also pursuing proposals to expand that pilot so that we can test what happens when you actually add an adoption attorney at a legal aid agency. And what does that look like? That's kind of stepping out of what most legal aids do. So we're looking to provide an adoption attorney at part-time if our funding proposals are successful. We also did a co-design project last summer with kinship caregivers and adoptive parents. And we did primary research with them. So they helped us prototype ideas. And we also did some secondary research. And that research showed that we're really finding that it's very hard to find support for trauma-informed parenting skills in kinship and adoptive families with Black and biracial children. So let me see if I can say that again. There's a lack of support in transracial adoption. And we're looking to try to fill that gap as well. So thinking about that. So folks want to work with us on ideas around that. We welcome your input in any of these areas. The last thing I think I wanted to mention here was that there are some resources available right now in Ohio. So at Ohio Can, we have these benefits coordinators and our navigators, and they can help them access different benefits that might be available. So that's just a phone call to Ohio Can, and I can help you find that number if you need that. And then there's also an Ohio Adoption Grant Program. This replaced a tax credit that used to exist. And this is not a limitless fund, but it does allow for it allows for some repayment of the costs for the adoption. So generally, it's like $10,000 for a general adoption. I think it's $15,000 for those that are adopted out of foster care, and it's 20,000 or up to 20,000 for those that are adopting children with special needs. But this is on a reimbursement basis. There is an application process, and funds do get exhausted each year. There's also the post-adoption special services subsidy. So this provides for $10,000 annually for a child that is adopted through private, public, or international adoption. The services that it will pay for are services that help, like the reasonable cost of services to address the child's physical condition, any developmental disabilities or mental health needs or emotional conditions that existed before the adoption or developed after the adoption, but can be attributed to their experiences prior to the adoption. So, for instance, if they had fetal alcohol syndrome or something like that, trauma, which is often the case. So it can provide for those. The funds can be increased to $15,000 if residential treatment is needed as well. And that opens every year in July. And there's an application process, and Ohio Can is actually sort of the gateway in that process. We have navigators that'll help families pull together all the information, put together the application, and then we transfer it to the state, and the state determines whether they're eligible or the application will be accepted and reimbursed. So with that, I can take a few questions if there are any for me. And just wanted to thank you all for your interest in this. Thank you for your interest in supporting kinship families and adoptive families. And just know that I'm here to answer your questions. And I'll end the slideshow, and then I'll be able to see your faces and take questions and look at the chat.
Thank you, Jo. I have learned so much in like 20 minutes. This is incredible. The work that you're doing is amazing. And we do already have questions flowing in the chat. Um, we have a question around, is there any possibility or anything in the work to increase pass limits? And maybe we can explain what pass is. I'm not sure if that's, Mindy, if you wanted to say more about that, or Jo, if that's ringing a bell for you. This is a new uh, program for me.
I personally have not heard
Okay.
anything. PASS is again that post-adoption special services subsidy.
Okay.
And it really helps families afford it also works for respite. So you can ask for respite dollars. And that, I think that's of interest to folks like Groundwork who are interested in childcare. And that can even sometimes be if the child is getting, family's getting respite, even through a family member that's appropriate for the child because they have a relationship, they understand the child's, needs and all of that. directly though to the question of an increase, I personally have not heard that, but I can try to find out and report back because we are trying to build our capacity at Kinnect for doing systems advocacy and policy work. And so that would definitely would be on our radar, but I'm not aware of it right now in conversations. It's definitely not proposed that I know of.
Thanks, Joe. And Mindy, great question. Thank you for popping that in the chat. Ah, the limit has not changed in many years, she said. Thank you, Mindy. Do other folks have questions? I jotted a couple down, but I want to make sure everybody gets a chance. Um, I'm curious, Joe, are there states, it sounds like you've done incredible work and seen incredible gains, especially in Cincinnati with the program that you described. Are there states that you think Ohio should look to that you've seen statewide systems work that you would recommend we take some best practices from? Are there like shining stars in this space that you think we should
Well,
look to?
one thing that I can tell you is that right now, the movement across the nation is to be able to draw down the Title IV dollars for high quality legal representation. And so that will soon to be tested in Ohio. There's an RFP out right now for assessing what Ohio could use, what kind of models, what those legal representation services could look like. Is it through public defender's office? Is it through legal aids? Is it through a legal panel? All of those things. What I can say is that that recently changed to be able to include kinship caregivers being able to get civil legal representation for their legal needs to help prevent a child from staying or lingering or being swept up into the foster care system. So states do not have to include that in their plan. Ohio did. And so I
Mm,
think we are going to be one of the early comers to making sure that kinship caregivers are included in the high quality legal representation. So I
fantastic.
think that's about the best I can answer that in this
Oh,
moment.
that's great. No, that's a great answer. Um, I wrote a note too to keep in touch around the e-learning resources that you shared that are under review. We would love to promote those in our newsletter and across our platforms too.
I am chomping at the bit to get them because I will tell you that so they're at DCY right now. And of course they have to go through communications and they have to go through legal,
Sure.
they have to go through all of that and make sure, but we think they're really, really sharp. And we actually shared them with the American Bar Association Center for Children and the Law and got an overwhelming positive reaction from them. So they are also saying, these are great. We like what you've done. Let's get these out there. So as soon as we can make those available, I just think they're just sort of plain language, walks people through whichever way you want to learn. And we just really appreciate our friends at in Greater Cincinnati that helped us deliver that so nicely.
Amazing. We're looking forward to it. I see a note from Bob. I don't think necessarily a question, but just some validation around seeing lots of children who are foster kids and experiencing housing insecurity through the work that they're doing in Toledo as well. Thanks, Bob.
And I can say we're talking about a lot about legal here, but like all of Ohio's families, it's early childhood education and it's childcare that are just very difficult. And the one thing I can say is about 50% of our caregivers are grandparents or great grandparents, people in retirement age. And so when they need childcare, and they do need childcare, even if they're not working anymore, even if they're retired, when they're caring for children that aren't their own and they have high medical needs and the aging parent has or caregiver has high medical needs, they need childcare. And our current programs are just not equipped to be able to make them eligible for uh, childcare without a work requirement. And that's just a work or uh, job education requirement, job training requirement. It just doesn't make sense for a 70-year-old grandmother. So
Great
my
point,
two
Joe.
cents.
Any other questions from the crowd? I don't know if you can share, maybe it's premature to ask, and that's okay, but you had mentioned that some of the incredible work you described in Cincinnati might be expanding with some other legal aid partnerships around this state. Is there anything in the works yet that we can look forward to in specific regions or yet to be shared?
Um, well,
Not to put you on
uh,
the spot.
let's say there's 5 legal aid organizations in
Mhm.
Ohio. We've worked with one in this legal pilot. We've had one that wants to work with us in a different way, and then we have
Okay.
two that are in conversations with us. We have multiple proposals prepared, and just kind of putting some final touches on some, but they include things like an attorney learning collaborative for
Mhm.
attorneys in Ohio around kinship specific issues so that they can be talking to each other and learning from each other and learning from the work that we've done, and from national folks too. We're again developing resources. Um, uh, I think you should stay tuned to what's going to happen with the high quality legal representation when that. I know there's several stakeholders here in Ohio that are working together on proposals. So that's really going to be a game changer for families, kinship or not.
Mm,
It allows
wonderful.
for civil legal representation. So, for instance, if I'm a domestic violence victim and what's going to get me involved with child welfare is domestic violence, I can get civil legal representation to help me find a legal solution to the domestic violence, protection orders, divorces, things like that,
Yes.
so that that child, and that is just something that has not been really available in the same way. And other legal needs, housing, education, all sorts of things. So if we can see that come to, and it'll be a long arc. It'll be a long arc to figure out how to do it and then what to do and then test it and then, you know, iterate. But it'll be
Sure.
really good for families nonetheless. And then the state can draw down those administrative costs for that.
Well, I'm grateful we have folks like you who understand these systems and have a deep background in this space, navigating how they intersect with and overlap with one another and figuring out the best way to support families.
And the last thing I'll say is that, as I said, Kinnect is we're um, we're flexing some new muscles and trying to get involved in systems advocacy more intentionally and more strategically and develop our partnerships. And so we think Groundwork Ohio is going to be really important to us in that regard, and we hope we're important to them. But
Absolutely.
all of the folks on this call, if there's something that you're seeing that you want thought partnership with, you think we need to have conversations, please reach out to me. And I'd love to have those conversations, be thinking about how we can collaborate on our systems advocacy for families.
Wonderful. Any other questions from folks while we have Joe? Well, we will absolutely share the slides with your contact info. We're really excited to get these materials out to our stakeholders. Grateful the timing kind of landed here within National
Mhm.
Adoption Month, Awareness Month. So maybe we'll be able to get this out in a couple different ways, not just our e-blast, but maybe some social media and other communications methods too.
Okay. We'll keep you posted on those other items that we're producing.
Yes, we're looking forward to continuing to work with you and really appreciate your work.
Great.
Have a great morning, everyone. Thank you. Bye.